Tonight we're going to talk about how all things exist in our mind and soul. The title sounds kind of deep and philosophical, but we'll make it as practical and simple and clear as possible. But it is a really, really important and beautiful concept to get because lots of people don't get it. So let's go for that, okay? So let's begin with this. There's an old axiom, you could call it a proverb, from in the hermetic laws. And the hermetic laws are fantastic because they were always about one sentence statements that within those sentences meant all kinds of things. I mean, not just meant by interpretation, that too, but meant it encapsulated several multi-layered laws or concepts. And I love that. That's the old saying, one picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, it's kind of like that. One brilliant statement has all kinds of layers and meanings. And so in one of these old hermetic axioms, it's a concept of within all things exists all things. Within all is all, and within all is the all. So what this means is that, as above, so below, that kind of a concept. So within the mind, all things exist. And yet we have to clarify. We're looking at a world and we say, okay, there's a human world and it has dimensions and it has all things, going on. One of the most important teachings from Buddha and the Buddhist teachings and teachers is the idea of withdrawing oneself from the world. And it's not exclusive to Buddhism, but it's an important piece of Buddhism. So it's to take oneself from the world. And I'm going to just sort of simplify this concept. So you're taking this idea that there's a world we look at, and they'll ask you, you close your eyes and withdraw yourself a little from all the senses. So you kind of, you back up and then you say, okay, I'm not my senses. I'm just giving like a very simplistic, crude version of it, but I'm not my senses. So I close off from the world by closing off the senses. All right. And I learn to kind of get quiet. And some of us go, oh my gosh, I'm really good at getting quiet. Getting quiet is not the goal, but it's a piece, it's a tool. So we sort of come back from the world. And then we start realizing, wow, I'm starting to see other things like within other dimensions and, in a sense, almost like universes within my being. Wow, it's amazing. And then they'll say, okay, but that's not the goal either. So go beyond that. And the point is, go beyond that, go beyond that, go beyond. And beyond means deeper within, deeper within, deeper within. So you could say that in the core of our being is the light of God. Wrapped around, I say it like a finger, it's actually, let's picture it like a dot, a perfect ball of light. And that is the spark of God within us. And then, when the children of God wondered what life would be like if they could be separate from God, there's the God piece, then all of a sudden, they go to sleep, and when they go to sleep, they create this dark barrier around themselves, just like going to sleep. So we're spiritually alive, shining brightly, and then going to sleep. And around us went this layer, a very thin but dark layer called the ego. Now, what exists? When we look outside of ourselves into the world, what do we see? Nothing. Darkness. Why? Because we see everyone else's light that's been surrounded by ego. So we see darkness, darkness, darkness. And so that's what it means by, the universe was dark and without form. So it was just empty. It was darkness. That's one of the meanings of the darkness. And it too has many, many layers. But anyway, we're looking outside and we see this darkness. Also because the light of God, let me say it this way, we have gone to sleep. And it's important to remember, what would life be like, I wonder, if we could separate from God, is the question. The real answer is you can't separate from God, so that kind of snuffs out the question. Back to point zero, pure light, done. However, the question is answered in another way. What would it like to be separate from God? Remember, one option is you can't, done. The other answer is, What a horrible thought that we would even want to separate from God. That horrible thought, which isn't necessarily horrible because it's just amusing. It's just amusing. Amusing means amusing. It's like that's kind of amusing. It's kind of interesting. What a funny thought. It's a funny thought because it can't actually be done. We can't separate from all there is. Just look at the logic of that. If it's all there is, you can't separate it from it. You can't separate from it. So, and I've talked about this many times, so forgive me for being a bit brief with it. So the children of God go into a sleep and say, instead of that can't be done, we go into a sleep and go into fear, like, what have we done? Oh my God, this is horrible. What have we done? And so we then try to hide from what we've done by putting a dark layer around ourselves and think, now that our attention goes outside, when we turn and look back at ourselves, we see darkness. We think we're horrible people. This is why you think there's something wrong with you. This is why you think, I just know a disease is coming soon. I just know nobody loves me. I just know somebody is going to betray me. I just know, it's like, I just know I made an investment and probably not going to go well financially. Not everybody thinks those thoughts all the time, but there's always at least one in the mind somewhere, because we turn and look and find ourselves to be lacking. We look back and find ourselves to be dark. So the ego says, not liking this, huh? No, I'm not. You know what I would do? No, what? I would turn around and go that way so you don't have to perceive your darkness. What a brilliant idea. What's out there? Well, it looks kind of dark. I don't want to go. Well, here's what we can do. We can pretend there's things out there to keep you distracted from the darkness within. But remember, on the other side of the darkness within is our pure light. So what we have are things out there that look like they're real. So it's kind of like, you go into a dark room, let's say even a child's room, and there's this idea of it's completely dark, but you have a flashlight, and you go into the room and you move the light around. You see a toy, you see a truck, you see a doll, whatever, right? A bedpost, you see things, a shoe. It's a dark room, but you show, you're showing things with the flashlight. So they're appearing. And what I'm saying is the ego kind of gets us to look outside and I see things that it wants us to see. So let's look over there. Let's look over there. Very specifically though, for example, when we're starting to change our lives and want to wake up, it'll turn the light and shine it on something. It's not a real light like capital L, but it'll turn a light which is metaphoric for our attention. So it turns our attention to an object, such as a person. Oh, look at that. Here I am working on my self-worth. No more settling, no more addictive behaviors. Wow, that person's kind of good looking and they're giving me attention. I mean, oh my God, I've never had like that before. I've never had that much attention. And we cannot seem to help ourselves and we get hooked into it. And back to old patterns. We forgot that person that looks all shiny and sparkly, just right for our addictive selves, happens to wear the same brand clothing that our abusive uncle wore. They have the same hairdo our abusive, neglectful mothers wore. We don't notice those things because we got hooked in. Later, of course, after you're doing psychotherapy, counselor's going to probably go, by the way, and along the way they might bring up things like that, and the two of you sit there with your jaws open going, wow, can you believe these amazing things were there all along and we missed it? So that's kind of what happens. The ego turns our attention outside. Now, the only reason it succeeds at getting us to see a fairly terrible life, because you could say it's not terrible, it's wonderful. Show me anything that you think is beautiful out there. Name it. Right now you can name it. Just name it out loud. You don't have to, try to call me and tell me. Just name it out loud to yourself. Well, rainbows and kittens and everything you see will die one day. And that's why Buddha said this world sucks. That's why Jesus says, there's nothing this world offers you. Now, when you start getting irritated at me saying that, that's because you don't understand. Your home is not this world. This world will end at some point. Even science that doesn't necessarily believe in God will tell you Even a star comes to an end at some point. When our our sun dies, there's no life left on Earth. So you get a rocket ship and you try to beam to another planet, and that star is going to die at some point. You can't. Everything in this universe dies because it isn't of God. Because in God, nothing dies. So now that doesn't mean you should try to just run into the caves of the Himalayas and hide away because it's all worthless. No, it's a really weird thing that has to happen. Seemingly impossible, but it is to become awake while we're here. And if you don't become awake while you're here, you keep coming back until you do. You don't get to not be awake here, go to the other side and go, oh, look at this. I should have had a spiritual V8, the old commercial. I should have had a V8. Oh my goodness. Silly me. And then not come back. Even when you get it on the other side or wherever you get it, some dimension, they're still sending you back here to prove it. Because the third dimensional world is the place to prove it. It's the place to ground it and really, work it and demonstrate it. Jesus woke up prior to his life being Jesus. He still had to come back and work it from beginning till end, which is why he ends his life on the cross saying, it is accomplished. It is finished. Meaning, I did it. Not just, that doesn't have just one meaning, but one of the meanings is, I did it. From birth to death, I completed the idea of being able to hold Christ consciousness and not lose it and have tidbits of it like some of us. I maintained it. Even temptation did arise, but I handled it right. Now that I got that done right, I can now tell all of you, just follow my example. What do you mean your example? You don't have exactly the same. You didn't even have checkbooks back then to see the zeros, and the minus numbers in your register. You didn't have quite the same things we've got today. But he did in all different forms. And if you think about it, the things he went through, you could say, are far more severe. He had friends that threw him under the bus, as we call it today. There weren't the buses then. It threw him under the camel. So there were friends that threw him under the bus back then. There were people that denied they even knew him. So do you have people that deny they even know you? You have family members that turn their back on you? Good. Didn't affect him. So you just keep going. You just heal. He had a father die when he was just a kid, raised by a single parent, you could say. I don't see how it affected his ability to be Christed. So he's saying, look, I went through stuff too. Anything you could name, I did some form of it, some metaphoric version of it, and I still pulled it off. So come on, guys, don't make excuses. He's saying, you could do this too. If I've done it, you can do it too. There's a saying he used, all the things I have done, you shall do and more. And people focus on, that means we're going to really do some cool miracles, even greater than his. It also means, all that he has done, you will do and more, which means go through the same kinds of crap he went through, garbage he went through, lessons, tensions, anxieties, temptations, and so on. Because it's part of the waking up process. You can't just wake up. All levels of waking up, every level of it, every leap to a new level of waking up comes from having passed a test. It's not like you just, have Wheaties and wow, that just took me to a whole new level. It's by passing our tests or by doing some spiritual work that creates epiphanies. But you don't just get it. It comes to us in those two forms. And it's usually a balance of the two. A bit of tests, some epiphanies. Yeah, you can sit in meditation and have some ahas, like how it comes to me just to talk about this today. It's like a nice aha, that's fine. But there are times when going through some difficult situations and managing them well, remembering to stay connected to God, and then getting insights and awarenesses from that. So don't think that these things only shall come from spiritual experiences. They come equally so from challenges and us passing our tests. And don't become fixated on it being only one or the other. Because if you only focus on challenges to be your epiphanies, then you're going to create challenges and nothing but challenges. If you think only epiphanies, then you're not going to ever really do any inner healing. You'll just do more of the sublime work, and you'll kind of have insights, but you'll not be able to ground it because you haven't made it real. So that's one of the values of like a 12-step program is they're not just telling you to find God, they're telling you to also look at yourself. So we need those two parts, which brings us back to that metaphor again. Here's that veil, here's this perfect light, here's that veil. We go out, we turn, we look back, we see darkness. You will never, ever, ever reach your light going that way. Explain it again. Let me say it again. It's impossible. Do you understand? It's impossible. First of all, there is nothing outside of ourselves. Everything is in us. What do we mean by in us? Is it in somewhere in my thumb? It means it's in your heart and soul. In your soul, which is your mind, not your intellectual thinking mind. The next level up is the abstract mind, the soul. That's the soul. By abstract, we don't mean like tripped out abstract brain. By abstract, we mean multi-dimensional mind versus the linear mind. The linear mind can say, I'm here and now I'm over there. 1 + 1 is 2. I think this. I don't like that. The discerner, the thinker. The abstract mind is 1 + 1 is, who knows? Sometimes it's 2. Sometimes 1 + 1, the one we just counted as 1 is more than 1, because in some dimensions it multiplied itself. You just didn't know that, so you were looking at the number 1, and you didn't know on the other side of a veil behind it were more things to add to it. So it's like it's abstract, and it's abstract in a good way, meaning all, sky's the limit, all possibility. So it's quite beautiful. But in the abstract mind is where our original beliefs are, not thinking processes. In the higher mind, the abstract mind, is the soul, and it's located right here in your heart. Metaphorically, the next chakra down is the lower mind, the solar fire plexus, the fire, the mind, the nervous system, the firing of the nervous system. As much as that has a purpose, the nervous system is still a linear thing. It is a chemistry. And it fires, as we call it, neurons firing. That's great, neurons firing, but they're still just doing a job that is linear, firing. What's making them fire is the other mind here. The one that says, I believe I'm going to integrate more God today. Make it so. Number one, the leader says to the general, make it so. And so it passes that down to the mind, and the mind says, got it. The mind and the brain, the solar plexus brain and the head brain, there's 2 brains, you could say, in the body, they communicate. And so all of a sudden, this brain says to that brain, make it so, here's what I want you to do. And it starts firing neurons to get this done, and muscle movements and whatever it happens to be, thought processes, all these kinds of things, even decision making. So off we go. And that lower mind, we think, is that's called the cognitive, the thinking part of us. We actually think that's what makes us greater than animals. But if an animal has a soul, just not a mind that is a thinker like you, it still has the next higher thing anyway. So anything that has the ability to feel the presence of God is equal. Just because a species or a something has seemingly developed a sense or an adapted in some way to have some sort of genetic gift doesn't make it better. It only looks better on the outside world. So there is this concept. I'm going to come back to the mind in just a second, but it's very important that we understand. Outside, turning back, all we see is this. And the reason this works is because this layer is pure ego and looks so bad. All right? So the ego can actually keep us going outwards. Why? Because of one thing. Anything outside will look better than this. And the ego made sure of that. So it tells us this is the core of all fear. It's like, take any phobia you have, take any wound you have, any issue, any unhealed wound, multiply it by hundreds and trillions. Okay? And you don't have this yet. This is even more intense. So please try to understand that. The ego is not just a there, ego. You can, be nice, okay, and let's get along. Some people think, you tame the ego. First of all, you don't need to tame it because it doesn't really exist. Nor do you do the opposite, destroy it, like in some religions, that's the concept. You don't destroy it because it isn't real. You don't tame it because it isn't real. What you learn is to simply, disperse it. You just don't choose it. You just make different choices. My ego inside is causing me to feel fear, bitterness, hurt, resentment, judgment, or whatever you want to call it. I know where that's coming from, and it's not what I choose today. You now just unplugged another strand of it within yourself. So it gets released. That's all. It's not killed. It's not befriended. It just gets released. Now to think, well, what if I don't want to release it? That would be your ego talking. So to say, I don't want to release it because I have free will, you're not actually exercising free will when you say that. You're actually under the bondage of your ego when you say it. All right, now, we turn and look outside, and there's pretty stuff and ugly stuff out there. And there's always a little of one or another here and there, highs and lows. You live, you die, you have nice things, they go away. That in itself, Christ teaches us, the Christ consciousness, the presence of God within us teaches us. It's here. And it's trying to send messages through the veil out there to us through books and channels and a song here and an internal message there. Those moments when it's trying to say, please reconsider. Please don't believe all the stuff you see. Please don't get overly attached to the nice things, nor overly afraid of the not so nice things. Just stand, man. Chill, because you're out here. Chill, just relax. And then here's what's going to happen. When you learn to hold my presence, even when you're here, all of a sudden you'll do it, and you'll do it, and you'll do it, and you'll do it, and all of a sudden the veil will be thinned and gone, and we're one with God again. There's nothing seemingly separating us. Now, here's what's interesting though. All the things that happen in our lives happen within our belief systems first. In other words, and that's our higher mind. So when I say all things exist in your mind, I don't mean your intellectual mind. All things exist in our beliefs. I cannot be watching this program if I did not on some level believe that I was ready to hear this particular comment, whatever comment it is. Now, you may not like what you're hearing, let's say. You still had to believe this is what you needed to hear. Let's say, for example, you deep down inside resent males or brunette males or whatever. And on some level, that is not healed. And your soul is trying to say, why don't we work on that? I know just the way to do that. Oh, look, we'll just randomly click on something online. Boom, there's a male, or there's a brunette male, or whatever it happens to be, or what I'm saying, or whatever. It triggers you. You can say, oh, what a jerk, but then you missed your test because you tried to look outside and say that guy's a jerk. You missed your test. Now you have entrenched the ego more, and you have entrenched more karma in the external illusionary world. So you're up creek with that. Samsara for you. That's a Sanskrit term or Buddhist term. More illusion for you. Okay, now, on the other hand, you can say, I needed to hear that. And then you might get tempted, because there's nice stuff out there and not so nice. You might get tempted to go, God, this guy's brilliant. He's great. What a great teacher. What a wonderful teacher. I love the way he words things, and that's great. You can do that. Do not become overly attached to him, though, no matter what. Don't get attached. And here's why. Because what you see out there is reflecting your belief systems. Here's the knowingness of the truth of God. Here's belief systems. And here's the external experience. So we only experience what we believe. I will see it when I believe it. I will believe it when I see it actually means I'll see it when I believe it. Whatever you believe, you end up seeing. It's kind of like saying we keep doing self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, we don't realize that statement is huge. I mean, it's huge. It means so many things. Self-fulfilling prophecies. Everything is pretty much a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it means not that you intellectually knew that you were going to create something deep in the belief system. So today, you thought to yourself, man, I really want to make some changes in my life. Click, you're watching this. I say something that works for you and you go, there it is. Thank you. Now, if you credit only the teacher, respect to the teacher is good and healthy. It's actually healthy, or your counselors or whomever. But don't worship them. Here's what's more important. Give thanks, appreciate, but what really happened? If you didn't believe that you were ready, you could not have been watching this. So I'm only here because you believed in this. And I must have believed that I could have people watching this. So you're there because I believed. So that's one new meaning to please have faith in me. Or you saying, please have faith in me. It means have faith in who I really am. Let's find each other in that faith. Let me have enough faith that you're ready to wake up. Let you have enough faith that I can mirror that. You see? So it's kind of cool if you think about it. Now, it's all mirroring our belief systems that are in the heart or higher mind. Now, all of that's happening within your mind. If you can believe that. It's a hologram. So the world out here is actually, here's the veil. Here's like a projector room of the higher mind. And it shoots onto the screen of life the things you believe, which videos you have, which tapes you have inside. If you have tapes of undeservability, your ego will put that tape in, watch it, and you'll manifest people that make you feel undeserving. Simple as that. And that's really naughty of them. That's really mean, those bad people. Bad, bad, bad. But, wait a minute, it's just a video screen. Why go up and throw coffee in the face of the screen that look like people? I don't like what they did to me. I understand, and I'm really sorry that happened and it hurts you. But, don't get too violent with the screen. That's a little bit, So, what do you do instead? Who put that video in? Your ego. But you had to give permission because you own your mind. So on some deep level, I'm not saying you chose abuse as a video, but the day you didn't choose love, you automatically defaulted to the ego to choose whatever it wanted. When we don't choose right, wrong automatically gets chosen for us, which seems unfair. You think it would be better if it's the other way around. If I don't choose negatives, positive always runs. That's not the way this worked when we went outside of God. Because we said, what would life be like outside of God? That would be the way it is, where God isn't the default program anymore. Okay? Hope that made sense. So we're watching a world based on our beliefs. So let go of the world now for a second. Because they're only coming from the tapes within our mind. And then, what has happened to our mind? Where is our mind? Well, there's a veil here separating God, pure light, from our mind, unfortunately. But everything in the world, watch this, everything in the world exists within our mind. Our mind actually exists within God. Our soul actually exists in God. We are sparks inside the fire of God. But we chose to seemingly separate. The veil is here now, the ego. We chose to separate and live out here as souls, and then souls that manifested life. So there's God, there's a soul, there's a life, including your body, your experience, external experience. God, soul, life. Life exists within our soul's beliefs, and our soul exists within God. But things have happened like this. We left God, and then the world left us. And the world is now mirroring things to us, but we think it's actually happening to us. God, if only life in the world would go better, I would be able to be a good person again. I would be clean and sober. I would be healthy. I wouldn't be sick. I would be happy. I would have my life mate, etc. If only what? If only this happened? This was after the separation, and it's just a screen. The screen can't determine anything. I mean, it's just silly. If you sit there and put on a horror movie on your TV, if you're cassette recorder, whatever it is, DVD player. If you put a video in there, let's say a horror movie, why would you expect a love story? It doesn't make any sense at all. So we actually sit there and yell at the screen, even telling God, as though God is on the screen, because it's a thing outside of ourselves, so we think it's out on the screen. God, I wish you would, where are you looking, guys? Outside, on the screen. Even if it's up in the sky, it's on the screen. Everything you can see, every dimension is on that screen on some level. So we're looking at the screen going, wow, why don't you love me? Wow, why don't you do this? Wow, I wish I had children. Wow, I wish this, whatever it is. You're talking to the screen. Now, if people walked in the room and you're looking at the TV going, I wish you were a love story, and yet it's a horror movie, they would think something's wrong with you, and there is something wrong with you, technically, when you're talking to the screen, telling it to change for you. That's why those few people here and there that have reached enlightenment, which could be some of you, could be me, some of us have reached certain levels of epiphany that we call enlightenment. It's when you start to see through the game. That's what Buddha meant by I am awake. It meant I now know this story that Michael's talking about. I now know there's a screen and it is not real. It's only a hologram of something else. What else, Mr. Buddha, as they interview him? Well, it's a reflection of the mind. And so when I started off a little while ago, the mind is the one going, I am now detaching from the world. As long as you're still thinking, you're still not all the way into your soul. So that's why in those exercises in Buddhism, you release and release and release layer upon layer. Even the thinker is still, in a sense, on the screen. Layer upon layer upon, and then you're, in a sense, beyond the thinker. I'm awake. And with the I'm awake comes the Heart Sutra, teachings of Buddha, comes sublime consciousness. And I said this before, I was talking, I think it was last week, not the fake sublime, not the people that say, I'm so sublime, because of my this or that, or I had a certain epiphany. As soon as you start having to talk about it a lot, it's probably pretty good evidence that it's not integrated and that real, even if you had some experience. If you're thinking about it and talking about it, you actually killed it to a degree. It becomes so integrated, it's just you, the light just channels through you in whatever form. All right, so what I'm now getting to a little bit towards the end here is that the outer world is existing within my higher mind soul, my soul mind. A lot more of this is explained maybe in my book, The Heart of A Course in Miracles, where I'm explaining a lot of those deep concepts of the Course in really clear, lucid ways. So you could try that out if you want. But the world disappears and it goes into my soul mind. So everything exists within my soul mind. Great. And where's my soul mind? It exists within God. Well, didn't Michael say that there's God and then there's a veil, the ego, and then the soul? Yes, I did. And then the world? Yes, I did. So here's the cool thing. Remember what I said a little while ago. When we hold so much light where we are, so much unconditional pure love, so much non-judgment, and I got to explain those, but so much of that awareness, and then surrendering to the presence of God, the veil disappears, and that which seemed to be over here, God, expands to include us. And now, everything then exists in the mind of God, the light of God. Saying the word mind can screw people up because they start thinking it's a thinking thing. The light of God, everything exists in the light of God. Now, when I say exists, this is going to get tricky for a moment. This world, somebody might say, because there's a lot of people that, pseudo-spiritual, they might mean very well. There are a lot of them are teachers or authors or just lay people, but here's what they'll do. So even illusion is in God. Even hate, fear, war, which are part of the illusions projected onto the screen, hate, right, death, all those things. Oh my God, I got it. They're going to have an epiphany, but it's not a divine one. I have an epiphany. that means that even the screen is in God, because Michael just said, everything's in the light mind of God. Yes, it is. Everything is. But this is a nothing. This doesn't exist. So as soon as you start saying, because of Michael's theory and many theories in the past, great teachers in the past, it is all within the mind, some great philosophers from the Far East, it is all within the mind. Then their students and the religions made from them say, it's all in the mind, which means, it's all good. It's all part of God. So, look, there's a little creature killing another creature. Oh, isn't that nice? Because it's one of the magnificent elements of God. Well, it doesn't feel very damn nice and pleasant if you're the one getting eaten. Isn't that nice? Look at that beautiful spider web. Sacred geometry spider web, man, that's amazing. And the spider must have some sort of knowing to create that. Well, that's all great. Get all brilliant about a spider. But what about the fly whose blood it sucks or whose flesh it eats or whatever it is, right? That's not very cool. Don't keep justifying gross things as being part of God. Those came from fear. Those came from the ego that believes that things can be destroyed and, even worse, should be destroyed. In God, none of that happens, which is why they say when the presence of God comes, the lion lies with the lamb. There's no death. There's nothing like that. So if we want to say all things exist in God, including love and, peace and war, love and hate, then why is it saying that when God comes, there's no more of that? Think about that. So if it all exists, if everything exists in the mind, light of God, then doesn't it mean all this does? You see, as soon as you ask that question, which some intellectuals or people that really fancy their ability to think and in a conniving way, they're going to go, I've got you beat. If everything exists, then that means that does. And that's why some people have successfully written books, spiritual books, where they said that and everybody went, they bit the hook, line and sinker. They just went for it because it makes sense to ridiculous minds that are broken and separated from God. But here's what the divine mind says. Well, good point, except those things aren't real. They don't exist. So even non-existent things can exist in God. But in that sentence, you just said they don't exist. So it's not that they're things that are non-things that exist in God. They're automatically non-things, which means they dissipate. There is no outside world to exist in God. They're not there. They're just images projected on the screen. Now, what about this guy? The soul, our soul and soul mind. It believes it's separated from God, which you cannot do. So even the part that thought it separated and created an ego to cover our tracks doesn't really exist. So even that is and isn't in God. It is because the soul, the light in us that is from God, is real. That is in God. The part that dreamt that it could be separate isn't, and so it dissipates. So it looks like we left God, the children of God. They fell from heaven. We look like we separated. We look like we created a world. We look like we're walking around, graduating from school and doing all these things. And we're quite amazed at ourselves. If all of the things I just described happen in one sneeze, going and returning, here's what ends up happening. Not only did all this happen in the twinkling of an eye, but the reverse happens. And that means at some moment, the children of God will turn their attention from being outer-oriented to inner-oriented. That one decision to stop talking about others and blaming others, hating others, or falling head over heels over others. Stop, outer, turn within and go, oh my God. It was all in my mind. Not, it was all just a hallucination, which it kind of is, but that's not what I mean. I mean, everything is reflecting my belief systems. It's quite amazing if you think about it. It's all reflecting my belief systems. And then in that same twinkling of an eye, we go back the rest of the way. There's a point where we so much let go of all this in the process. See, you don't actually have to work on letting go of the world and then, here we go, turn and fight the ego. This is what's cool, guys. As you work on your stuff with the world, the ego, without you realizing it because it's behind you so you don't see it, the ego is thinning and thinning and thinning. So when we do our work, the ego is fighting harder to exist, to survive, because it's losing its grip. So it's got this bite on the back of our necks going, go that way. And we're like, no, I don't think so. I used to think my ex had the authority, power over me. They were responsible for my low self-worth today. I thought my mom's genetics made me sick today. I thought something family from 20 generations ago caused something. I thought, but wait, no. You track things and release them. You track things and release them. You do that Buddhist type of exercise and release things. You keep doing whatever works for you to release. Some of them are healing techniques. Some of them are spiritual epiphanies through meditations and insights. Both of them are important, but it's release to the left, release to the right. Release through healing, release through spiritual work. Release. It would be great to do tons of it, constantly, but usually it's a day at a time. So let's just accept that it's a day at a time. Would you like it to speed up? Then just do more of it. But not everybody's going to want more than a little at a time, because that means a lot of changes, and then changes intimidate people. So we're going to be in a twinkling of an eye. I got it. I stop investing there and I'm working on myself. While I'm working on myself, this thins out. And all of a sudden, something's tapping on our shoulder. Oh God, don't tell me. It's the ego. I forgot. I've done so much work on or with my earth stuff. Damn, now I got to turn around and face my ego. But this time we're not afraid. And we don't say, I'll just go ahead and find new things to get distracted with. Hey, fine, I'll do it, even if it kills me. We turn and the ego's not there. It's God. And God says, welcome home. Or you could say, welcome home, as it expands to include us. And that's kind of what happens. Even God itself expands and grows when it reintegrates us into its consciousness. Not because we took a portion, but because through our choice to love and forgive a world that wasn't there, we have, in a sense, grown. And God, in its love and appreciation for our growth, expands because its heart swells up enough to include us. That's how it all happens. So that's why it's true and it's not true that it's all within the mind. Only things that are real are in the mind. But also the things that are unreal appear to be in the mind. So we could say everything exists in the soul mind and God mind. The good news is really only real things exist in the God mind. The bad news is the soul mind wondered if there's another option, manifested that other option, believed in the other option, and got trapped in that other option. So we think out of those three things, we're over here, which we're not. But we think we're over here, and stuck, praying to God way over here to come and help us. God is telling us, God sends a message here to the soul to send a message to the human self. Just let go and trust in me, the soul, so I can trust in God and we'll go home. But the ego is blocking that message from coming in and from coming back. So it blocks the incoming message from God and any, you could say our desperate pleas for help to go the other direction. It blocks and blocks. So anytime we try to grow, it's right there saying, I wouldn't go this way if I were you, because I'm here to mess you up. And you did a horrible thing by even leaving God. So even if there is a God and a better life, you don't deserve it. Go the other way and just settle with life. Just be happy you have a partner, even though they're not very nice to you. Be happy you have a job, even though it doesn't pay you what you deserve, etc., 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 etc. And there's niceties too. But the niceties out there are really just so that we don't go too nuts with the things that aren't so nice. But eventually those pass. They pass away and then we're upset again. Pleading to God to fix our life, and God keeps saying, I'm sending you messages. It's all about choice. Choose to hear me, and the ego couldn't stop it. Stop believing in the advice of your ego, and you wouldn't have the things you have. So here's where the correction is made. This is only the manifestation. Here's where the correction is made. This is all perfect over here in God. This is where the decisions are made. Choose whom ye will serve, God or manna. And so I close with this idea. Right now, you're watching this video, even if you're watching it 10 years later. Right now, you're watching this video. And whether you had a nice experience or not, let's just go with this. And let's just, for now, let's pretend it's a nice experience. This concept will kind of hold for either option, but let's go with the nice one. So you watch this and you go, wow. Now, let's just play with this for a sec. You're sitting here in your soul mind watching a video on the screen. You see? You're watching me, but I'm a video on the screen. So, if this was a pleasant experience, do you understand that you had to have chosen right? You had to have chosen properly, that you deserve something good. You had to have listened to the voice of God leaking through the veil of the ego into your soul, making you go, I would like a little something different. I would like to wake up a little. Or whatever it was that you thought. And then you manifested watching the video of me. Now you could say, oh, Michael's really great. And that's fine to compliment and to respect teachers. But that's not the end point. The end point is, I'm only reminding you that you figured this out, that you picked this. I don't mean just intellectually putting on the video or the presentation on the social media. I'm talking about you had to have decided that you had value, or you could not have seen a valuable presentation. So, you're watching a screen somewhere. Just try to watch this for a second. Figure this out. Tune into this. You're watching a screen that's showing you a presentation that comes from cyberspace, and it's being presented right here from my place. Pretty background, and lighting and whatever we use here, cameras, all these kinds of things. So you're watching this all the way cyberspace to another part of the planet. Might even be watching it later in time, but all of this. So picture this. You're there. There's a screen, cyberspace, my cameras, and so on. My home, my country, my town, my city, yours, oceans between some of us. Oh, and then it's daylight, it's night, there's a moon, there's a sun, etc., 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 etc. All the way out, let's say, to the outer limits of space. And within space, within all the universe, all the dimensions, all the galaxies, all this is existing. You're sitting there and all this exists around you. And what I'm saying is this. Imagine, though, that little head you have right here, watching all of this with your human eyes, is actually not who you are. You're an energy of light, looking like you have a body and a skull and a brain within the skull and so on. But you have a consciousness, and your consciousness expands to those outer limits of the universe. And so all of this, including me, are within your soul mind. Because the universe doesn't exist in God per se. The universe as we know it, the material universe, is a reflection of our soul mind. So all those things I described are over here on the screen. The galaxies, the dimensions, they're all on the screen, guys. And all that's on those screens are on videotapes in your soul mind. So within your soul mind, all that existed. So it's not over here, it's all here. So in here, inside your beliefs, here's, let's say, the little brain that thinks it's watching this. And then there's Michael, and there's galaxies and dimensions and planets and da-da-da. The whole universe is here. That's your soul mind. And then your soul mind is a dot within the mind of God. But not a dot as in a limited being, just metaphorically. Because as soon as you take this thing back into the God, it's one with God completely and is all with all. Love within love. But even right here, it's magnificent, but yet nothing compared to this, God mind. Our soul mind contains everything. There is nothing you can see, taste, feel, smell, experience in any way, any way, shape, or form, anywhere in the universe that isn't existent in your soul mind. Every explorer in history, every wretched dictator, everything is in the soul mind, because the soul mind is made up of God memory, reminding us who we are and what we deserve, good things, and the ego. The ego. Telling us all these other things. So our lives are made up of yin and yang. You could say, these two perspectives, these two perceptions. It's way beyond yin and yang, trust me on that, but I just mean a duality. But only one of them is real. And that's why we need the humility to say, and I don't know which one to trust anymore. I do because I've listened to so and so on, this guy that charges $1 trillion for empowerment exercises. That's not what does it. I've meditated myself into silence and that's not what does it. Day-to-day practice, love and forgiveness is in this world, this universe, the way you practice being God. Not by looking better, not by acting better, like, look at me kind of thing. None of that really does much for us. Day-to-day practice of love and forgiveness. You cannot behave more like God and thin the veils between us and God and release the visions you see on the screen of life any better than you can with love and forgiveness. All the other things, they help, I just want to be a little healthier and I want to improve this and work on that in my life. That all helps. I want to wear a nice amulet, or I want to do this, or whatever it happens to be. I want to extend my lifespan. All the things. They're all just part of the stuff on the screen that comes from our belief systems. And those belief systems, again, are going to be either whispers from God or screamings from the ego. What are we listening today? And I'm saying nothing draws you closer to the center of really who we are more than love and forgiveness. That's not just one of those gratuitous speeches of love and forgiveness, guys. Everybody, love and forgiveness, peace, joy. It's not. It's a very practical statement. It means I am as God when I love and forgive. God doesn't actually have to love and forgive anything, because in God, there is no thing that ever happened to offend. Only when we separated did the offenses and defenses take place and got projected onto the screen of life. So in God, there's actually not love in the form of forgiveness. There's just love. Therefore, there was never anything to forgive because nothing but love ever happened in God. Here, we had these tormenting separate thoughts, and they manifested as tormenting experiences. So while we're here, thinking we're there, we need to practice forgiveness. And that means forgiving when we thought other people had power over us. Forgiving that. Now remember, not just actions. You'll start with forgiving what those people on the screen did to you. Do that. That's very important. Do that. But gradually you'll notice your forgiveness processes start shifting to forgiving yourself for ever manifesting those kinds of people, those kinds of events. What was I thinking? Let me forgive myself. You see? And it starts shifting. That's a lot of how you know you're growing, when your dialogue talks more about you than them, forgives more you than them. But don't jump the gun. Work on that other. Do the forgiveness with the other while it seems like it's happened. Go ahead and play the game, and then you'll notice it organically shifting to where you're talking about yourself. Please trust me, it'll shift organically. Don't go too far into trying to force that to happen to prove that you're spiritual or whatever. But I was saying, it'll start with forgiving others, work on forgiving yourself, but something else also happens. And that is, you'll realize it's not just forgiving offenses. You start realizing, oh my God, as I deepen this, I also have to forgive that I ever even thought there was anything outside of me. I have to forgive that I think that there's dimensions. I have to forgive that I ever thought that there was sickness. Not just a person who was mean to me, sickness. I have to forgive everything. I have to forgive I myself. I have to forgive that I think you folks are watching me right now. And you have to forgive that you think you're watching me. Not because forgiveness is we're doing something wrong. See, it's kind of a bummer that people put that connotation on forgiveness is only relevant with bad things. Forgiveness, means release. So yes, you do release judgments on other people and you do release judgments on yourself, but you also release all form of limitation. Not just horrendous or overtly bad things, all forms of limitation. Release them. How? That's the prayers, the constant prayers, the consistent prayers. Whenever you can. Definitely when you think of people that are, they're coming to mind, you don't know why. It might be the Spirit is putting them in your mind so that you can apply some forgiveness. But also sometimes just when you're looking, when you catch yourself going, wow, look at that clear cutting on the mountains. That's terrible. Probably something to forgive. Forgive the people that cut the trees. Forgive myself for believing that I needed to see in my soul mind out into the world an image of clear cutting and killing species of animals. Like, wow, what was I thinking? I need to forgive myself. I need to forgive the people I thought that did it. I need to forgive myself, and then I need to forgive myself for believing that there were vulnerable, species that were vulnerable to people killing them. Poor things. How did they get there? I created them with my beliefs. So I need to forgive myself for that. So it's a really amazing practice to just think positive things too. Oh, look at that rainbow. And I'm releasing, because the word forgiveness is going to be misinterpreted sometimes. So I'm going to release that rainbow to be even greater to what it truly is. And believe it or not, you'll have times when what just happened, the rainbow looked like it magnified 100-fold. It did. Probably not on the outside, but it might have. But what happens is on the inside, your inner eye got activated to see the light that cannot be contained in the bands of a rainbow. Same with a person that you're working with in this technique or this style of technique. Forgiving. Forgive that tree that you think it's a tree. Why would I do that? I like the tree. Forgive, release that you think it's there. When you do that, it goes poof and it expands 100-fold. See, everything gets unfrozen. It's only in our selfishness that we would want to keep a tree into a tree, and a dolphin into a dolphin, and a person into skin. It's not that you're going to harm them. We release them. Release people you have liked, release people you haven't liked. Release things you have liked, release things you haven't liked. Release dimensions, release nature, release everything. Release Jesus, release Buddha, release men, release women, release Democrats and Republicans, release everything. Because they're all just projections, opinions manifested from belief systems. And they're usually not healthy belief systems. Usually they've come from the ego self. Because we're not used to listening to God whispering in us as to what we could really see. The only time you'll know when you're hearing God is when you have chosen to somehow release the encapsulations on life. Then all of a sudden you'll have glimmers and, whoa, what was that? That's God. Insights, feelings of love, all this kind of, all these kinds of things. That's when you'll know you're getting it. That's why we say that there's a peace that surpasses understanding when you practice this. I pray this has made good sense, guys. I know it's, in some ways a bit out there maybe for some people or a bit lofty, but this is how it works. And this is how it worked in history. This is how it will work in the future, how we all get home. And what's really beautiful is that all this procedure happened in the twinkling of an eye. That phrase is actually used in the Bible, by the way, in the twinkling of an eye. But all of this happened in the twinkling of an eye, and will return home. All in the twinkling of an eye. So it's kind of cool if you think about it. Which means that whenever it began was also the moment it ended. So that means we're living nothing but a memory of what seems to have once occurred and eventually ended. And we're just living the memory of it. So we're sort of experiencing a photo album of what life would have been like outside of God. The photo album, however, is filled with an infinite number of DVDs or videos that were in our minds. So that's all that happened. We're living the photo album of what happened when we went on that journey without a distance to a place we never left. In any case, Many blessings to you all. I really, really appreciate you joining us, and join us in some other form as soon as you get a chance. And remember, these are nice reflections of your higher mind. When you have higher things happening to yourself, it's a good decision you're making because it reflects positives in your higher mind. Isn't that cool? It's not just the good things outside. They're reflections of your better choices. So thank you for being a reflection of my healthy choices, and I pray that I was a reflection for yours. If I wasn't, track it, work on it, heal it, and then it'll be turned into positive anyway. All right? Peace and love to you all. Bye-bye.